Welcome, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating explainer on a platform called XPENV.com. Now, if you've been following the evolution of decentralized messaging, you already know that finding a platform that actually balances hardcore security with real-world usability is incredibly rare. But this system, it completely redefines digital sovereignty, specifically for demanding enterprise users who absolutely cannot afford to leave their sensitive data sitting on third-party servers. So we're going to dive right into the very architecture of what they're calling a serverless fortress. So let's just quickly look at our blueprint for today. We'll be breaking down this serverless architecture, looking closely at its unique encrypted gates, analyzing this concept of the 5-minute moat, examining the economic tolls required to actually use the system, and finally, discussing the heavy but totally necessary responsibility of true digital sovereignty.
Okay, Section 1, the serverless fortress, the architecture of true decentralization. This comparison really illustrates the massive paradigm shift we're talking about here. On the left, you've got the traditional web app model, centralized databases, application servers in the middle. I mean, this is how almost everything on the internet works right now. But it creates these massive honeypots of data. They're literally single points of failure that hackers just love to target. Now contrast that with the right side. XPENV.com shifts away entirely from that outdated model. It's simply a static React single-page application that relies entirely on the Stellar Mainnet as its backend. There are 0 application servers sitting in the middle waiting to be compromised. So the really crucial takeaway here is that all persistence exists exclusively on the public ledger. By completely removing the central database, there are literally no central servers vulnerable to an attack. As an enterprise user, your highly sensitive data isn't just sitting on some server farm owned by a giant tech monopoly. The infrastructure is entirely decentralized, running natively right across the nodes of the Stellar network. Moving right along to Section 2, encryption and identity. The encrypted gates and Soroban guards. Let's walk through the ingenious journey of a message on this platform. Step 1 happens before your message ever even leaves your device. It's encrypted locally, right in your browser using AES 256 GCM, which, as you probably know, is an incredibly robust encryption standard. Then in Step 2, that resulting ciphertext is converted to base64 and attached to a Stellar transaction using the MIMO text fields. To anyone just watching the public blockchain, it's just opaque, meaningless data. For Step 3, the receiver actually has to pay a small read fee to interact with it. And finally, Step 4, the message is decrypted purely in the receiver's browser. So from start to finish, the actual content is completely invisible to observers on the blockchain. Now, what's really interesting here is how identity is handled. They use Soroban smart contracts to link exactly one Stellar address to one username. But here is the real kicker. There are no public user lists. None. You can't just go search for a colleague's name in a directory. You have to know their exact username via a trusted, out-of-band channel. By keeping usernames entirely off public directories and requiring exact knowledge just to initiate contact, the system eliminates spam by its very architectural design. All right, Section 3, ephemerality, the short window, or as they like to call it, the 5-minute self-destruct moat. 5 minutes, that's it. Once a message is decrypted from that last step we talked about, a relentless 5-minute timer begins ticking down right on the receiver's screen. And when that timer hits 0, the interface executes a truly aggressive cleanup. The RAM is wiped completely clean of any plain text. Any blob URLs that were generated to display media are immediately revoked, and the cryptographic keys used to unlock the message are permanently discarded. We really have to highlight the severe security risks associated with handling sensitive enterprise data in a web browser. I mean, browsers are inherently porous, right? They're susceptible to memory dumps, cross-site scripting, and malicious extensions. By actively wiping the RAM after just 5 minutes, xmvnb.com drastically shrinks that dangerous window of vulnerability. I absolutely love this quote from the source material because it perfectly illustrates the final state of your data. This ciphertext, that encrypted blob of data, remains on the public Stellar blockchain forever. But without those cryptographic keys that were just permanently discarded in the browser memory wipe, that ciphertext becomes nothing more than unrecoverable mathematical noise. It literally becomes mathematically impossible to ever reconstruct that message. Okay, let's jump in to Section 4, economic model and threats, the tolls to enter and the spies within the walls. Take a look at how the costs map out on this platform. I want you to look closely at layer B and layer C. Sending a message costs about $1.10 in XLM, and reading a message costs another $1.10, with a fraction of that actually routing back to the sender as a reward. This goes to show that every single action is atomic, requiring an intentional financial transaction. And this economic friction, it's absolutely a feature, not a bug. It makes mass spamming financially ruinous, creating a quiet, highly intentional environment that demanding enterprise users really need for their communication.
However, and this is absolutely critical for enterprise users handling highly sensitive data, you must be intensely aware of the threats that cryptography simply cannot solve. Device malware or rogue browser extensions can still absolutely read your computer's memory during that brief 5-minute open window. If your actual endpoint, your laptop or your phone, is compromised, well, the strongest blockchain in the entire world isn't going to protect your screen from being recorded or scraped.
So, to protect yourself against these browser-level vulnerabilities and really tricky social engineering attacks, the official documentation lays out this golden rule. Treat the read fee as a literal cost of due diligence. You should only ever pay to open messages from counterparties whose reputation you can actively verify. If a random unknown username pops up with a message, discard it immediately. Don't pay the fee, and definitely do not open it.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5. Digital sovereignty and responsibility, the absolute burden of the sole guardian. This is where digital sovereignty gets very real for enterprise users. XPENV COM transfers all responsibility directly back to you. There is no customer service desk to call up. There is no convenient forgot my password button to bail you out. If you lose your keys, you lose your identity and your data. Period. You are paying for the infrastructure with every transaction instead of being the product of a free infrastructure that mines your corporate data to sell ads. For enterprise users who truly demand digital sovereignty, this absolute control is exactly what is required. But make no mistake, it comes with the heavy, absolute burden of securing your own endpoints. We're going to leave you with this profound final question to think about today. Look at the messaging apps you're currently using. Are you unknowingly trading your privacy and your company's highly sensitive data for a frictionless free experience? Or are you finally ready to embrace the strict, paid responsibility that comes with true digital sovereignty? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into the serverless architecture of SovereignV.com has given you a fresh perspective on what's actually possible when we completely rethink how our digital data is stored, shared, and secured. Catch you next time.